Welcome back. It's time to have our quick daily press review, and we are very much delighted to have with us Dr. Hala, our political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us, ma'am. And we are going to start from Al Ahram front page, where we read Egyptian-Chinese negotiations to enhance joint cooperation. $60 billion from Beijing to support the infrastructure in Africa. And still with the same issue, but this time from Al Masri Al-Yawm. Also from the front page of Al Masri Al-Yawm, and we read, Shukri says from Johannesburg, Beijing is not participating in Ethiopia's Renaissance Dam. The Chinese president says $60 billion to support Africa and developing 100,000 poor villages. 30 missions of agriculture, experts to the continent financing 100 projects for clean energy. Prime Minister Engineer Sharif Ismail is to address the summit of 40 African leaders in Johannesburg. We have more details in the coming report.
Prime Minister Sharif Ismail is due to address a summit of 40 African leaders in Johannesburg with a host of major deals set to underline China's commitment to the continent despite a sharp fall in investment. In his speech, Ismail is due to focus on the importance of the Chinese-African cooperation, which should be based on mutual interests. The Premier will also tackle efforts exerted by Egypt to pave the way for foreign investors and the huge opportunities of investment in the country in all fields. The China-Africa Forum is the main cooperation and dialogue framework between Beijing and the African states. It was established according to a Chinese initiative to boost mutual economic coordination. For his part, Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri hailed a pledge by China to inject $60 billion in African development projects, describing the move as important for infrastructure and transportation projects in the continent. Egypt's top diplomat was speaking at the opening session of the forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit that took place in Johannesburg, South Africa. Shukri said that Egypt will present a number of national projects, including the Suez Canal Development Project for investment. Earlier, Chinese President Xi Jinping announced $60 billion of assistance and loans for Africa at the summit, signaling commitment to the continent despite a recent fall in investment.
Welcome back. Dr. Hala, you have an experience, a long experience with the Chinese people, and you've worked in China for a while, I think.
Yes, I've been lucky to do that.
When we talk about China and when we talk about money, we all know that they are not going to pay money except if they do know well that this is a successful investment.
Yes, of course.
And that their capital is very much safe and secure.
Yes.
To what extent do you think that those $60 billion aid from China is based on mutual interest? It's not only for the sake of the Black Continent and its people.
Of course, mutual interest. Both countries, it will benefit both countries. Mm-hmm. No country will put or pay money unless there is something in return. Mm-hmm. But they help because this continent is very poor. Mm-hmm. Its countries are underdeveloped. They don't have enough resources to even for the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. They have many places. If you go to some places in Africa, you think that this is the 18th century, mm-hmm. not the 21st century. So China is helping, and they must benefit, of course. Mm-hmm. But China doesn't target colonization. Mm-hmm. like other powers. Mm-hmm. They care for economic growth and economic help, and this is their way of having leverage on other countries. But they are friendly.
My humble evaluation of this, China is paving the way for a new market and is constructing a new market. If the African peoples, especially the poorest nations, are developed enough to be a market for the Chinese goods, this is to benefit China even more than the Africans.
In fact,
so they are not looking just for today or tomorrow.
Yes,
they are looking
of course,
for the generations to come. Is that true?
To some extent, but they already opened this market years ago. Africa is a market for China. There is no doubt in that. And that happened years and years ago. Since they started cooperation with these countries, they targeted this country when the West neglected them.
Yeah.
The West sucked the resources of Africa, and then they left these countries. They don't help them. They always try to press them, to have pressure on them. But China is more clever. It helps these countries, and it has more leverage. In the New World Order, every country wants a block of power. If they guarantee Africa as a block of power, this is very important for China. It has economic might, and this is political might, to have so much supporters.
Yep. And taking a look at South Asia in specific, our top diplomat was in an Asian tour which took him to Japan and South Korea recently, paving the way for a visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to those two countries. This means that we are moving forward more and more to the east, and especially to the South Asian powers, to improve our relations, with those countries.
In fact, this is very good that we diversify our resources. But we must not forget that Japan and South Korea are in the sphere of the West. But when we go to the East, this means we go to China. We go to other developing or the new tigers, the economic tigers, because they have a model, especially China. China is a model that deserves to be followed by countries like Egypt. They have been fought by the West so ferociously. They tried to plunge their people into drugs. They tried to prevent technology from reaching China. They did everything they can to weaken and to contain China. But they couldn't, because there were true will to develop.
True will to develop. This is the key word, and we hope that we all have this will. Let's go to another headline from Al-Ahram. We read also from its front page: the parliamentary elections in 4 constituencies that were postponed from the first round. 126 independent candidates facing off with 55 parties in the postponed constituencies. Still with the same issue, but from Al-Masri Al-Yawm, where we continue to read also about the parliamentary elections. The coalition of committees starts under the Doom. The Al-Masriyin Al-Ahrar, or the Free Egyptians, heads to the economic, and the Noor avoids the religious. New coalitions and banquets in the first phase, postponed constituencies. Still with Al-Yawm Al-Saba, but from also its main pages, Sabahi starts forming an opposition party. The former presidential candidate succeeds in emerging the popular current and the karama, or dignity, and presents the idea to the Democratic Coalition, or At-Tahaluf Ad-Demokrati. We do have more details in the coming report.
An official with Egypt's Election Commission said that the turnout in the second final runoffs in the parliamentary elections held earlier this week was 22.3%. The balloting, held over the past 2 months, was for Egypt's first legislative since the chamber was dissolved by a court ruling in 2012. The overall results will be announced later, and Parliament is to hold its inaugural session later in December. Ayman Abbas, the head of the High Election Commission, said that about 6.3 million voters cast ballots in 13 provinces that voted in this final round, which included the capital, Cairo. Abbas added that 555 candidates made it to the parliament in the two stages, with a 28% turnout, roughly 15 million people, out of a total of some 53 million. He added that the highest turnout was in South Sinai and the least was in Suez. Abbas noted that a rerun in 4 constituencies will take place on December 5th, 6th and 7th, and on the 14th, 15th and 16th of the same month for the runoff. Candidates in the 4 constituencies will compete on 13 seats in the coming parliament. The parliament is due to convene before the end of the year. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is to appoint 28 members to reach the total of 596 seats. The parliamentary elections are the third and last step of Egypt's roadmap.
Welcome back. Ma'am, in a press conference yesterday, Councillor Ayman Abbas, the head of the HEC, announced the final results of the parliamentary elections. Inshallah, our parliament is going to convene before the end of the year. But after announcing that it's 28% of the Egyptians voted, roughly 15 million Egyptians out of 53, many people would think that the coming parliament is not going to be that fit for fulfilling the mission to represent the Egyptians. And others are saying no. Those who were fully aware with the importance of the parliament, the new parliament, those who went to the voting stations, and those are the elite or the most important class of the Egyptians. Which is which?
In fact, it's my generation who went to the polls. Young people did not care at all to go to the polls. And we cannot neglect that the youth represent around 60% of the Egyptian population. If they abstain from going to the polls, that means there is something that must be tackled. Maybe we have more experience, we are more wise, based upon our ages, based upon our experience, but there must be a way to deal with this block that is abstaining from participating in political life and in everything.
Yeah.
And in fact, they already, the presidency already started, and they plan to have some kind of negotiations or some kind of dealing with the youth. And if they have an agreement and they incorporate the youth into the government and every field in our life, this will be better for Egypt and for our government.
Amen to that, ma'am. But tell you something which I witnessed on the ground. I was covering the parliamentary elections from the Hala governorate.
Yes.
There was such, and by the way, the Hala was the third,
one of the highest turnout.
Third, yep. And whenever it comes to the Hala, we are nearly 4 million voters.
Yes.
The percentage in the Hala was 36%. I myself witnessed a lot of the youth, whether males or females, going to the voting process. But whenever it comes to the period of propaganda or the election campaigns, there were not enough, and this is something which we should admit. Tomorrow is another day, and we hope that the coming parliament, inshallah, is going to represent the Egyptians in the best way.
We hope so, because they are going to transform the constitution into laws. And
Inshallah,
this is
yes.
very important.
And very critical.
Yes.
Back to Al-Ahram for more local news, where we read 16 killed in an attack with Molotov on a nightclub in Al Agouza area. Still with the same issue, but from Al Masr Al-Yom, a massacre in a nightclub, 16 killed in an attack with Molotovs in Al Agouza, in Al Giza. The same issue is tackled from Al Yom Al Sabi'. Revenge is the motive behind the fire at Al Agouza nightclub. Violence, I cannot define this except with violence or having violence as a trend or a way to solve problems.
Yes.
This is, I think, a phenomenon which we should tackle.
Of course.
Or it's not a phenomenon yet. I mean, if I am exaggerating, tell me if I am exaggerating.
No, you're not exaggerating. In fact, the Egyptian society took a violent inclination after January 25 and after June 30. People do not have this respect for the institutions. Some people think that they can do anything and get away with it. They can even kill and get away with it. They can kidnap people. They can do anything. And this didn't happen at this scale before the two revolutions. What happened is that people felt, and this is especially for undereducated people.
Yep.
If you are educated, you have enough wisdom to understand that the institutions and the government is meant to help you.
When you're
It is not
educated, you have a
against you.
refined character, I
Yes.
should say so.
But
حماسة عند المجنون, those who
if
were...
they feel they are very
By
powerful.
the way, I'm not... those are the names of those captured. And just to echo what you have said, no one is above law. And those responsible for this issue were arrested the very same day of their crime, despite the fact that they were in Suez. And the arrest came after the investigations of the Interior Ministry or the General Prosecution, and it led to capturing them or to seize them in less than 14 hours after they committed their crimes.
And there is another part of this. It is social inequality, because they felt very angry because they were refused entry into this nightclub.
Yeah.
They felt humiliated. In fact, the reaction was very bad. But this social inferiority gives a very bad feeling at the hearts of such people.
Yeah.
But
this cannot be an excuse.
Of course, it can't be an excuse, but it needs to be tackled.
Yeah, amen to that. Back to Al-Ahram for some regional news, where we end with Riyadh gathering the Syrian opposition next Tuesday. Saudi Arabia is hosting Syrian opposition groups and many of the main rebel factions next week in an effort to come up with a unified front ahead of peace talks with representatives of the government in Damascus, scheduled to begin early next year. Ma'am, do you find some light by the end of the tunnel to end the suffering of the Syrian people? I mean, on the diplomatic front, at least with this meeting in Riyadh due to take place just in 2 or 3 days?
In fact, there will be a light at the end of the tunnel when all Arab countries understand that their unity is their future, is their safety, is their security. They cannot fight each other under any pretext or through agency wars, like what's happening in Syria.
Yeah.
In fact, everyone must understand this, that the future of this region, the whole region, is redrawn now. We must be very aware of what's happening. We must understand what's planned for us. We must cooperate, and we must not stress certain points like that. I don't like this president, he must go. This is the decision of the Syrian people. No one, neither Arabic countries nor the West, have the power to impose on the Syrian people who to choose. They must have elections,
yes,
and whoever is chosen by people must be accepted.
I cannot find a better statement to end this press digest better than this. This should be the decision of the Syrian people.
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
You're welcome.
By this, we come to the end of our press digest. Our special thanks to our dear guest of every Saturday morning, Dr. Hala Enara, for her input. Thank you very much, ma'am. Right after the short break, we are going to be back with the remaining part of the breakfast show, so stay tuned.